Well, good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? My name's Councillor Buchanan, Falkirk Council Planning Convener. With me to my left, I have a councillor who is also the Deputy Convener, Councillor Kelly. I'm going to my right and I'm going to ask the two officers that are with us this evening to introduce themselves and give us their designation.
Convener, I'm Douglas Blythe from Council's Legal Services. Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'm Ian Dryden. I'm the Manager for Planning, Development Management, Building Standards and Climate.
Thank you. We also have Jack Frawley, one of our top officials over there, and we have a number of officials online. This meeting will be held remotely today, Thursday the 27th of April, starting at 6 p.m. in accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003. It has been directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will also be live streamed. So first of all, I'm asking for apologies, and I've already got one in, which is Councillor Laura Murtagh. Apologies. And also we have a situation where Councillor Sinclair is running late, and it may be an opportunity if he can maybe join later, but at this present time we'll put his apologies in.
Sorry, Convener, I've just received an apology from Councillor Steenbank.
We have an apology just come in for Councillor Steenbank. Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to declaration of interest, and just for clarity, I'll read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? No, none intimated. That takes us to item 3 on your agenda, which is the predetermination procedures. And just for clarity, I'm going to go through these. Well, the reason, first of all, for the committee consideration this evening is a predetermination hearing is required for an application for a major development that is significantly contrary to the development plan. Thereafter, consideration of the application by the Council's Planning Committee is required. The proposed development is considered to be significantly contrary to Falkirk Local Development Plan 2 LDP 2 and the National Planning Framework 2, owing to the scale and the proposed housing outside of the village limits and within the green belt and countryside. It's also noted that no decision will be taken at this meeting this evening. This report provides factual and background information in relation to the proposed development. No planning assessment of the proposal is included or implied. This will be prepared after the hearing this evening. I will now go through the procedures and bear with me for this. Item 3 on the determination hearing process is the convener will ask the relevant officer from the council to present the report relating to the planning proposal. 4. The convener will invite the applicant or their agent and any statutory consultees to speak in relation to the proposal. The applicant or their agent will normally be entitled to speak for 10 minutes, whereas statutory consultees will normally be entitled to speak for up to 5 minutes. 5. The members of the committee will be invited to question the applicant, the agent, statutory consultees, and may seek guidance on factual or legal matters from the officers after each presentation. 6. The convener will invite other persons who have submitted representations, including the objectors or supporters, to speak to the terms of their representations submitted in response to the planning proposal. Each party will be normally permitted to address the committee once for up to 5 minutes, so as to avoid repetition. Where parties have a similar interest or objection, a spokesperson will be invited to speak on behalf of the group. In these circumstances, the spokesperson will normally be permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes. 7. The convener may limit the number of speakers addressing the hearing on any particular topic, or may curtail any speech which repeats any matter on which the hearing has already been addressed. The applicant and or agent will have a right of reply to any points raised by any party heard by the committee. The members of the committee will be invited to question any party heard by the committee or may seek guidance on factual or legal matters from council officers after each presentation. Members of the committee may identify any other planning issues that they wish to see addressed in the report to the meeting of council that will consider the application. 11. The convener will then close the predetermination hearing. So that takes us back to item 3, which is the convener will ask the relevant officer from the council to present the report relating to the planning proposal. And before I ask Catherine Chorley to summarise the report, just to say that it's on your agenda item, which is 4, development of land for residential use, landscaping and open space at Brooklands Farm, Mill Road, Carnshaw, Falkirk, FK2 8QE for Taylor Wimpey UK Limited. The report is 5 to 71 in your agenda papers, and the report is now going to be summarised by our officer, Catherine Chorley. Thank you, Catherine.
Sorry, convener. I see Councillor Kerr has put his hand up since joining the meeting. I don't know if you want to.
Councillor Kerry, you got a question at this time?
Just to put an apology in for Councillor Flynn, convener. I had technical problems at the start. I got in when you were at item 2, number 2 there, so I'm happy with that. Just to put Councillor Flynn's apology in, convener. Thank you.
Thank you. They've been noted. Thank you. Catherine, carry on. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. Jack, if you could show the location plan, please. Thank you. You can see from the location plan that the site is an irregular shape and includes a narrow spur that leads down south to the Chapel Burn. The land is mostly agricultural in nature, with the exception of 3 occupied cottages, which you can see up in the northeast side of the site. Jack, when you're ready, please could you swap to the indicative plan for me? Thank you. The application is for planning permission in principle, so the layout gives an idea of what could come forward if the proposal progresses to matters specified in conditions application. The indicative number of units shown on this proposal is 150. So the application was accompanied by quite a lot of detailed supporting information, which is listed at 1.4 of your reports. There was one historic application of reference on the site, and that's noted in section 3, but the site is not allocated in the development plan, so the report provides a bit of context for the reasons for that non-allocation, and that's in paragraph 3.3 onwards. There's been extensive consultation carried out on the application, and this is summarised at section 4. There are ongoing discussions with the agent on some of the matters raised. The public representations are summarised at section 6, and the list of representees has been provided separately to you. There is an error in the drafting of the report, and the correct number of representations received so far stands at 92. Now, you know that National Planning Framework 4 has now been adopted and forms part of the Statutory Development Plan, along with Local Development Plan 2. On that basis, the relevant policies from both documents are noted at section 7. Following that is the material considerations, which are set out at 7B, and these include an appeal decision at a nearby site to the north of this one. The reporter's full decision is attached at the end of the agenda papers. As mentioned previously, a full assessment of the proposal will be presented back to Planning Committee at a later date, and we have site photographs. If members would find that useful, we can share those too. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Catherine. Now an opportunity where the convener will invite the applicant or their agent to come forward and any statutory consultees to speak in relation to the proposal. The applicant or the agent will normally be entitled to speak for 10 minutes, whereby statutory consultees will normally be entitled to speak for up to 5 minutes, but I believe that we have no statutory consultees, is that correct? That's fine. So that simplifies the matter. So I'm now asking the applicant or the agent, first of all, to introduce yourself and then carry on with 10 minutes for your summary.
Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name's Colin Lavetti. I'm the Planning Director at Barton Wilmore, now Stantec. We're the agents for the applicant, Taylor Wimpey. I've got Beth Cairns here from Taylor Wimpey with me as well, just in terms of responding to any questions from members that might come up after the presentation. If you just bear with me, I'm going to try and just share my screen for the presentation. If members can maybe confirm that you can see the presentation along the screen there.
Yeah, no
Yes.
problem.
Yep. Okay, well, I'll just get going then. So thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. In terms of the structure, covering a few points tonight, looking at the site history and context, which the case officers touched on, explaining a bit about the development, bringing everyone up to speed with the community engagement process and how we've responded to some of the objections received, touching on planning policy and key considerations, and then looking at technical matters, some of the economic benefits of the proposal. In terms of site history and context, I'm conscious the case officer has covered this within her report. The key point being that we are now looking at a larger site is promoted through earlier iterations of your development plan, and things obviously at 5-year intervals of developed quite a lot in terms of the site. Originally been recommended as a development option, which wasn't taken forward. In 2015, the reports are acknowledging that the site might have some logic as a development opportunity, and as recently as 3 years ago, as part of the current LDP, whilst not supporting the site being allocated, because I think the main concern was housing numbers and not needing the site, a very clear steer in terms of landscape impact that the site could be considered a rounding off of development in this area, looking at its physical location. Our landscape visual impact assessment confirms that this development very much would round out and infill the existing settlement edge. It's Denhouse Moor and Carrinshaw. With regards to Greenbelt, which is one of the key historic points that's laboured through the examinations of the LDP, this is very much an opportunity for us to enhance and provide a new settlement edge through structural planting with native species, etc. I suppose the point I'm making, just the history of this site is very much looked at landscape effects primarily, and we're confident that these can be addressed when the site is very much a natural infill. In terms of the development, the case officers obviously summarised this, but yeah, 150 units, of which we are now offering 25% to be affordable, which was circa 37. There's now 2 vehicular points of access, one of which we've kind of added to the scheme following discussions with your roads colleagues. And one of the big benefits of the scheme is the significant areas of open space, almost 1.6 hectares. And our design approach has always been to create an attractive and accessible and semi-rural edge, incorporate existing and enhanced features within the site, such as existing trees and hedgerows, and put a network of multifunctional open spaces. So I'll show you that in a second in terms of the indicative layout. Also looking to integrate drainage infrastructure using natural landform and look at creating ecological networks, wildlife habitat corridors across the site. As the case officer flagged up, this is also an application for planning in principle. So we've got an indicative layout, which if we were to get planning consent, we would look to come forward in a lot more detail in the future. We're also introduced a new walking and cycling path along the north boundary and a new pedestrian link. And Taylor Wimpey as a business very much got a commitment towards energy efficient net zero homes and trying to use good design to prioritise some natural solutions such as siting of homes, orientation and materials to benefit from that. I know the case officer presented this already. If people can see my cursor, just to be clear, there's pedestrian crossing that we would be installing here. We're offering a new pedestrian and cycle footway all the way along Webster Avenue. Also looking at a new pedestrian link down this strip here connecting to the core path, and also through recent discussions with roads, there's been a request to incorporate to enhance the footway along here and upgrade local bus shelters, which I think are
Sorry, is it just me or can nobody else hear anything?
No, we've lost them.
We're for the same. Let's go back to Mr. Laverty, we can't hear you.
Within a 10-minute kind of walking distance. I just check everyone's still hearing me.
No, we
We
lost
can
it.
hear you there, but you were off for a minute.
Oh, you
there.
lose me there, sorry. Am I back?
You're back.
Did you lose me? Right. So I'm just explaining, if you can hear me now, the 20-minute neighbourhood just demonstrates the location of the site in terms of the 10-minute kind of walking distance, gives it good access to schools, parks, some shops, and other facilities within the local area. In terms of community engagement and objections, we undertook a comprehensive community engagement process with our website where we got 63 feedback forms and over 700 people visiting the site. Taylor Wimpey have very much been transparent in efforts to be open with the community and incorporate feedback. We are aware there's been some concerns from the residents living in the cottages on the site, which members may have been approached about. This is a private legal matter between the landowner and their tenants. Taylor Wimpey currently have an option agreed with the landowner, but ultimately that's their decision how they deal with those buildings on the site. We've also made attempts to engage. There's not a live community council or active one within the area, but we made attempts to engage with Greenmouth, including Skinflats and also Ayr Parish community councils with no response. And I think our point is that concerns regarding technical issues such as traffic, ground conditions, biodiversity, visual impact have all been addressed in a suite of strong support information and also our layout. And hopefully the case officer will agree there's been positive amendments made already since we submitted the application, and those discussions very much continue. In terms of policy context, members will be aware that there's an LDP policy regarding whether there be shortfalls in the housing land supply may allow other sustainable sites to come forward. We're also aware that NPF4, the policy, and I think in the case officer's report, kind of contradicts this. It's our position that the recent senior council's opinion, which we've issued to the case officer, confirms that NPF policy 16F cannot be applied at this time. That should really be applied once the council's next LDP is in place. And on that basis, it is clear that there's a shortfall in the 5 years land supply. That was confirmed by the Scottish Government in the appeal for Old Bellsdyke Road, and also the council's report in January this year of another application where they confirmed that they felt the shortfall was around 122 units. The previous appeal looked at the shortfall being circa 600 units. Accordingly, it's our view that additional sites are needed to maintain an effective housing land supply to ensure the completion of our homes to deliver the LDP strategy. Touching on these key considerations, we acknowledge the site lies in the Greenbelt. However, our assessment proposal against the development plan, in this case LDP 2 and NPF4, needs to be holistic and needs to be balanced, a point which has been reinforced recently by the Chief Planner. Aside from Greenbelt policy and NPF4, which, as I say, does have a presumption against approving non-allocated sites, we do feel that the proposal complies with the development plan as shown in our planning statement and the recent NPF4 addendum that we prepared and submitted to the council. The shortfall in the housing land supply triggers assessment against policy HSG01. Going back to the site history, that very much confirms this, in our view, the site is logical and appropriate for new housing. But it will continue to be subject to development pressure if it isn't supported at this time. And just to clarify, the site is not prime agricultural land, which I'm aware there's an LDP policy around and also features an NPF4. Our view is, and I appreciate the decision has not been made tonight, our view is that members should take the opportunity to approve the site now, rather than run the risk of being forced to support development on less sustainable and, should I say, more isolated sites, which are likely to be more politically sensitive. We consider the site to be a suitable and logical location for new housing, and there's no technical constraints to that the development coming forward. In terms of technical matters, there is still discussions underway with the council's transport planning unit, but there's currently no objections from statutory consultees, which I think demonstrates that the technical solutions we've proposed are appropriate. We have responded positively to requests from TPU so far, but we've already made some amendments to our layout. and all relevant surveys and assessments were undertaken to the council, including flood risk and drainage, transport, ecology, landscape, noise. We basically covered all the key points. As we say, discussions are ongoing, but we're obviously still going through determination, but we don't anticipate any matters which can't be resolved to allow planning permission in principle to be approved. And that then goes to say that any residual matters that might still be in question are minor matters which are capable of being addressed in detailed design or approval of matters specified in conditions stage. Just touch on economic benefits. We provided an economic benefit note with the application.
Excuse me, Mr. Lafferty, apologies, but you're in your final minutes, sir.
Okay, just in terms of economic benefits, we've submitted this statement already. Hopefully members can read some of those numbers, but 23 million construction value, a lot of benefits there, 168 jobs, 215 construction jobs. Added to that, we've already agreed to education contributions of circa 670,000 with possible contributions towards healthcare. In conclusion, it's an attractive and accessible site, and I think it will deliver a better landscaped edge to east of Stenhousemuir. It's a sustainable location, and it clearly offers a logical location. There's no objections from consultees and no technical constraints, and this proposal will deliver a significant range of benefits and Section 75 contributions. In terms of policy, a proper balanced assessment is required. And in our view, through the submissions we've made, we feel that the proposal complies with the development plan. And accordingly, we would request that when the application is presented for consideration at a future committee, that members support the application. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, sir, for your summary. Before we go to 5 on your the hearing procedures, which is the members of the committee will be invited to question the applicant's agents, statutory consultees, there's none, and may seek guidance on factual or legal matter from the officer after each presentation. It's just to let members know that with us this evening we have 3 officers, one for the Flood and Protection Unit, Gary McGregor. We've also got the Roads Development Officer, Craig Russell, and we've also got Children's Services, Richard T. So let's go back to 5. That's the members of the committee are invited to ask questions of the applicant's agent. So is there any questions coming at this time for the applicant's agent? Councillor Redmond?
I've just got a few questions. The first one, you kind of touched on it about the 3 cottages on the site, but am I right in assuming that as part of this, the 3 cottages will, if it was granted, be demolished?
Mr. Lavetti? Mr. Lavetti?
I think they're frozen. Oh, they're gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Lavetti?
Apologies. Technical
No, it's
issues
okay. We've got a number of questions coming to you from Councillor
That's fine.
Redmond. Okay, Councillor Redmond.
Yeah, the first one was just, and you kind of touched on it already, but could you just confirm, as part of this application, if it was accepted, would the 3 cottages on the site be demolished?
Yes, so it's our intention through the application. We've shown development across the whole site. We've shown those cottages being removed because that reflects Taylor Wimpey's kind of agreement when they come to acquire the site, should planning be granted. But ultimately, if the landowner or the farmer wanted to retain those cottages, then that could, it's at their decision what happens there. It's a private legal issue between them and their tenants.
Right. I understand it. It would be good to have, I don't know if as part of planning, you must have to get planning to demolish something, so I'd imagine it would maybe be good when it came to the committee if we knew for sure. I'll just move on. The next question was 4.9 about the pedestrian crossings. Are some of these going to be, I've seen at the site below, I think there's tunnels underneath the road. Is that the plan with your pedestrian crossings? Are they going to be, keeping the traffic and the pedestrians separate? or is it maybe a zebra crossing? Could you maybe expand on that a wee bit, please?
I think you're referring to the south part of the site where there's a levels
Yeah.
change and there's tunnels, but at the moment, I mean, I suppose the honest answer is at PPP stage, at planning in principle, we would make a commitment to those crossings being put in. They wouldn't be designed until the detailed stage. However, my understanding is they would just be standard, they would be level across the existing roadway. And the two crossings are at obviously the top part of the site. It's one at the top part. There is a potential to cross the site to bring the south link on the other side of the main road, but that's a discussion we're still having with roads. So, but I don't think there'll be a need for tunnels or level changes, but that, as I say, that's still to be agreed with the roads department at detailed design stage.
All right, thanks. That moves on to my next question. It was about, I've seen it was mentioned about St Bernadette's would be walking and cycle paths to St Bernadette's Primary School. But I think Karen Shaw Primary School is to the east of the site. It's the non-denominational school, and there wasn't much in the way of that, making sure there's a safe pathways. It's maybe that would be more better answered by officers, but is there plans to have a safe walking route to Karen Shaw Primary School as well?
Well, I think all we can really do at this stage is provide the connectivity and the footpaths within our site when they terminate at the site boundary, although we have obviously agreed, particularly the site link that comes south that roads officers have requested. Some of that land may well be outside the application site on council-owned land, so that's something we'd be happy to discuss with the council and seek agreement on. But we are limited in what we can do with the site because of land ownership challenges. But if it's council-owned land, there's certainly an opportunity to discuss that with our client, the applicant, if it was felt there's a requirement to improve it. But we would certainly look to as many connection points throughout our site to different directions to maximise those routes.
Councillor Redmond will bring Mr Dryden in just to maybe give us some information in relation to your question. Thank you, Mr Dryden.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. As Mr Lavetti said, obviously this is a planning permission in principle, so clearly there are some aspects of the proposal that's before you this evening won't have that detail, but certainly that's something that potentially as a result of tonight we could take further clarification on with our colleagues, and also Mr Lavetti obviously on the call as well. He can take that away and possibly come back with further information, you know, in response to that, and that's something we'll look at. But again, some of the detail would be actually, you know, sorted out at this stage. It's a planning permission in principle, but nevertheless the principle of safe routes to school is something that's always would be looked at and considered. It would be a valid material consideration as part of the determination of the application. And that will come back to you when we're in a position to bring this to committee for this evening's meeting, and obviously any other information that arises tonight, then we'll obviously engage with Mr Lavetti and colleagues, and we'll also engage with our technical consultees, and we'll bring our full report back to the committee to address these matters.
Yeah, thanks. And then just my kind of last question rounding up is 4.19. It was talking about the mine shafts that's in the site boundaries. I was just looking at the coal mining risk assessment, and I think the site's it was the former Carn Hall colliery. So I was just wondering, and the coal mining risk assessment had good a kind of list of mitigation measures, included concrete capping of the mine shafts, foundations would need grouting, a full impact assessment for mine shafts and vents, etc. Have the developers fully factored in all these costs? Are they aware of that, and do they think that obviously it's quite a bit of a challenge if there's a lot of mines being in the site? Do you see that as a challenge, or is it something that Taylor Wimpey can deal with?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, listen, we're well aware. I mean, as you can imagine, any house builder, one of the first things to do in any site, especially across central Scotland, where there's been so much mining activity historically, is they'll check the ground conditions to offer some reassurance that any of the mitigation measures or recommendations from that coal mining risk assessment, because the coal authority are a standard consultee, that they will that if the council were minded to grant, they would be conditions of any detailed consent that all of those measures would have to be put in place. So absolutely, it's something that's fundamental priority for any site, and Taylor Wimpey will have done their assessment of this site, very much understanding what the future challenges will be, and how much technical input and groundworks are going to be required to address them.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Can I just ask one final question? Just
Carry on.
I don't know who would be best to answer it, but I think they were saying there's kind of 5 shafts in the site, and they've got the Lady Charlotte shaft, which seems to be the main one. Are we just relying on the maps for these, or are they actually, is there a physical marking on the ground that could be found to mark where they are? Just some.
Yeah, so the information that we have at the moment will be based on historic sources and co-authority data, but so our indicative layout is based on where we expect the locations of mine shafts to be. But one of the first things they'll do if consent is granted before going on site is dig boreholes and do a detailed ground investigation, intrusive investigation, to double check that those mine shafts, and as you're probably aware, quite often they're not in exactly the same location. So that's one of the key things they would do, get out the intrusive investigation to find out exactly where those mine shafts are, so that they map them on site today and base the detailed design around that, rather than relying on old maps.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
We'll bring Mr. Dryden in again. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Dryden.
thank you, Kabir. I just wanted to just pick up on the discussion Mr. Lavetti's clarified. The point you're raising, Councillor, was a very valid and salient point.
Yes.
But I would draw attention, this is a planning permission in principle. I would draw your attention to paragraph 4.21 on your report this evening, which clearly shows a desktop analysis has been undertaken, and for the purposes of this application, the co-authority, who are a statutory consultee, are satisfied with the work that's been done to date, and clearly that should permission be made to grant at some point in the future, that they are recommending certain conditions that would then be attached to any planning permission in principle as part of the reserve matters. So really, at this stage, the amount of work and analysis being done for this type of application is sufficient.
Thank you, Mr. Dryden. Thank you, Councillor Redmond, for your input. Any other member like to ask any questions of Mr. Lavetti at this stage? None? Okay, then that's fine. Thank you. That takes us to 6 on your hearing procedures, where the convener will invite other persons who have submitted representations, including the objectors or supporters, to speak to the terms of the representations submitted in response to the planning proposal. Each party will normally be permitted to address the committee once for up to 5 minutes, so as to avoid repetition where parties have a similar interest or objection. A spokesperson will be invited to speak on behalf of the group. In these circumstances, the spokesperson will normally be permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes. Can say at this stage that we have no people want to speak in support, but we have 2 confirmed objectors, Susan Beats and Ross Jenkins. So, Susan, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good evening to you.
Good evening.
For listening in. You have now 5 minutes to speak to the committee in relation to your representation of objections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the main concerns I have is along the lines of the flood risk, and I see in point 422, whilst Scottish Water have no objections to the application, it does not confirm that the proposed development can be serviced, and they will not accept any surface water connections to their combined sewer systems. Now, my concern on the flood risk is you're paving over and concreting over greenbelt land at the moment, and with the best of intentions with wildlife corridors and green spaces, people pave over their gardens and put astroturf down with hard surfacing in their back gardens. This all creates hard surfaces which are not absorbing the water. And where does that runoff go? It goes into the drains and the sewers and the lower areas in Carnshaw, which are already at a high risk of flood. Obviously, this adds to the flood risk. So I want to, I'm concerned as to how this can be considered in current times when they're spending so much money and high concerns about flood risk. And you talked also about the money that was going to be given to address health for funding for that. And I don't quite understand how that money can be spent when our hospitals and GP practices are currently at capacity and over capacity and struggling to retain and hire staff to continue to deliver health care. So that's another, to me, serious concern, and I just wonder how these are going to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll probably know, if you've got the paperwork, that there'll be an opportunity for the agent to have a right to reply to any points raised by any party heard at the committee. And I'm quite sure that Mr. Lavetti will be taking notes of the points which you've raised. Now, we have at this stage Ross Jenkins, so we'll ask Ross to come forward and speak. Ross, you have 5 minutes, same as your colleague there, Susan Beats. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. I think Susan did raise a lot of the things that I was wanting to raise as well. The only other thing that I'll add is just, I know that we've chatted about primary schools, the two primary schools, but the high school, I know that by everyone's admission, the high school is one of the largest, or if not the largest in Scotland, in fact. What plans are there to maybe add capacity? I mean, if there's going to be a couple hundred houses or 150 houses, there's obviously going to be children and high school children within the property. So what's the plan for ensuring that there's enough capacity that they can go to a school locally and not have to travel further out of field?
Okay, is that you finished, sir?
Yeah, no, I did have a couple of other things, but Susan, she's grasping on a lot of things I was going to raise. So I'm quite happy with just that additional question there.
Okay, thank you. As
Thanks.
I said initially, that I'm quite sure that Mr. Lavetti will come back in relation to the questions you put, and I'm quite sure that maybe members later on will be asking some of the salient points that you brought forward as well.
Thank you.
That takes us now to an opportunity for the applicant to come back and has a right to reply to any of the points raised by any party heard by the committee. So what I'm saying to you, Mr. Lavetti, is we don't want any new information in relation to the application. You've heard the two objectors, so your position at the moment is try and address the points that have been raised by the main one. I think the main two that I flagged up was obviously the flooding, and we've got an officer here that can speak to you later, and the other one was obviously capacity issues for the schools. So you've probably been taking notes here, so if you would just like to respond to, first of all, Susan Beats.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. I've had a few issues with IT here. Right, okay, good. So the first question, thanks. In terms of flood risk and drainage, we've understand that the points made. We've provided full assessment and reports in line with industry standards. We've done a flood risk assessment and a full kind of drainage strategy for the site. There's obviously SUDS, sustainable drainage basins within the site, and the idea is that we will drain any additional surface water flows through that SUDS basin, and it will drain at greenfield runoff rate, which effectively drains like a field would. We've got no objections from the council's officers or SEPA with regards to drainage or flood risk. So there's probably not much more. I'm unfortunately a planner and not a civil engineer who'd be able to answer that question in more detail. But as far as I'm concerned, we've demonstrated that there'll be no issues from drainage or flood risk through our proposal. And the second point regarding education, it kind of goes back to the point I made in my presentation. We got a response from Children's Services. As members will be aware that there's policy guidance in place that developers would make contributions towards education, and we've agreed to make contributions across nursery schools, primary and secondary, a fairly substantial sum, nearly 700,000, 670. But that's maybe one for one of the council officers or Mr. Dryden to answer in terms of how the council choose to spend that money and invest it in the local school infrastructure. But our understanding is that the council's education department are satisfied that if we make contributions that they can use that money wisely.
Okay, that takes us then to 9, which members of the committee will be invited to question any party heard by the committee or may seek guidance on factual or legal matters from council officers after each presentation. So I'm going to go straight to our flooding protection unit, to Gary McGregor. Gary, are you with us? Here?
You'd accepted.
Oh, he's not online because.
Sorry, convener. He's not here today, but I have got a little bit of a summary on flooding and drainage issues that I could maybe read out.
Because obviously that's a really important issue that was brought up by the objector, and as Mr. Lafferty says, he couldn't really answer that because he's not got the technical expertise. So if you could maybe give us some information, and obviously by the time this comes back to committee, we need to ensure that in the report, and obviously we'll have an officer there, Mr. McGregor, will make it. So carry on, Catherine.
Yeah, so the SEPA flood maps show a high likelihood of surface water flooding, but it's been accepted that this can be resolved by landscaping and at the detailed design stage. We've also requested pre and post development overland flow routes, so you can see where the water's going. These pre-development flow routes have been provided, but the post ones can be provided at the detailed stage. Obviously, at the point that they know what the proposed development is going to look like, you can then provide that further information and carry out that detailed assessment. We also requested calculations for workings of hydrological rainfall calcs using suitable industry standard calculation methods. Much of this information has been provided and agreed by our flooding team, but further analysis would need to be carried out when the detailed application comes in, when we have that information again about surface area coverage, that sort of thing. Details of modelling approach used, which can be again provided at the detailed stage, and flood maps for various flooding events were provided and updated as part of the application. And again, once you know the detail of what's proposed, they can be assessed as part of that application. The only other issue that was raised was regarding the ditch or potential culvert, which is covered in point 4.6 of the report. So that would be something that would need to be agreed and discussed. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but we can perhaps expand on it as part of the application report.
Yes, okay, thank you very much for that. Now go to the second major issue, which is always a major issue with major developments, as Children's Services. Is Mr. Teague here this evening?
Yes, I'm here, convener. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes, we can hear you fine. Well, you've listened to the concerns brought forward by Ross Jenkins, the objector. We obviously, it doesn't matter what major development comes in, there's always major concerns in relation to capacity issues of our schools. So in this particular issue, I'm just wondering what the position is with your service.
Yeah, obviously the reference was made to Larbert High School, which has been a major concern in this area for, well, the last 15 years or more. The occupancy at Larbert High School currently is 94%, which is about the highest it's been, certainly for the last 12 years. And that's despite the fact that we've spent circa £3 million expanding capacity at the school, and also that's notwithstanding the £18 million it cost to relocate Garran Grange to a new building, Grangemouth, which allowed the school to expand into the space that was left behind. Even so, the school roll, which is currently at about the current year's census was 2,048, which is just about the biggest school in Scotland, secondary school. That's going to increase more. In a couple of years, the occupancy levels are going to be at 98%, and we're going to have to manage that somehow. That will tail off gradually, but I don't see the very high occupancies really going until getting towards 2030, beyond 2027. So we're stuck with these very high occupancies for quite a while, and we're going to have to manage them. And even when we get beyond that, there's going to be high occupancies that will need to be continued to be managed. So new housing always presents an additional challenge, and so what we said when we were consulted on this application was that if it's approved, that we would require a contribution to deal with capacity pressures. Now, how we deal with them, and that was the specific question of the person that spoke earlier. I wouldn't be able to say specifically how we dealt with them, but there would be, I guess, possibly bricks and mortar extension continued, alterations within the school. We would have to look at where the pressures were. Secondary schools are very complex animals, really. The pressures can arise in areas you don't always predict. Sometimes it can be changing room capacity, it can be sports capacity, it can be in science, and it really depends on the curriculum and the timetable and where. So we would look at that as we go through the process and decide where appropriate to extend the capacity and how we would do that. But certainly, if this development goes ahead and the applicant has agreed this, that we would require a contribution in line with our supplementary guidance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes.
Caught me out there, convener. Very interesting. Obviously, I represent the area and I know the site very, very well. For those who don't know it, this site's in a severe slope, and I think Mr. Lavetti would agree with that. It is quite a severe slope from that roundabout down into Cairnshore. And Jack, you used to come through that area as well, did you not? So you'll know it reasonably well. It's quite a sloping area. I know a lot of the flood stuff is being put back, and I appreciate what Catherine was saying. My worry is if all the detail of the flood stuff doesn't come to later, because I know the problems in there, I deal with them, and I've dealt with some of our council houses that are getting flooded off the land as it is at the moment, which is a problem in itself. So I don't know if we can extend that. Can we also make sure, and I'm not being disrespectful to Gary, I'm sure he had something important to do tonight. Can we make sure Gary's in attendance at the hearing itself? I think it'd be very important, and I appreciate what Catherine's put in, but I think it's really important that we have him there on that night. On education, again, I think Mr. Teeds touched on it. The size of Larbert High School, the fact that it's actually probably the biggest comprehensive school in Scotland at the moment, and is actually going to get even bigger. There's only so many sardines you can put in a tin. And there's not a great deal of land round about Larbert High. So I think what I think the details that Richard's been asked to come up with again becomes vitally important, and that's one of the things that obviously would concern me as we go forward. Hopefully, Richard, you sort of get where I'm going there. I did take what you were saying on board, and it's something I'm very, very aware of, is how busy Larbert High is. I know it's only PPP at the moment, but there was a mention of, I think it was Mr. Lavetti mentioned the affordable housing. I don't know if what format that's been agreed in, because quite often we get to hear that early. The problem with selling affordable housing at the moment is that the cost to build a house, that by the time you take a standard discount off it, it really does not become affordable housing. And I suppose some more detail on that, if it's possible, would be useful. I do have a concern, and this is for officers, and because obviously we had the site to the northeast of this, which was refused at planning committee and then continued to be refused by the reporter, and for the reasons that are laid out by the reporter. Mr. Lavetti picked up on MPF4 and seemed to want to discount part of it, and other parts he was quite happy to take. Can we make sure the officers are quite clear for us on our guidance on MPF4 on this, because it's pretty new to us. I know it's pretty new to everybody else, but it's pretty new to us. Can we make sure we've got that clear as we go into the actual committee for this? That's all I've got to say at the moment.
Well, thank you. I'm sure the officer have been taking notes today. Take notes, and obviously you're 100% right. We need to ensure that our flood and protection unit, Gary McGregor, is going to be here whenever they come back. Before I ask if there's any other members would like to ask any questions, I would also like to say at this stage that there will be an opportunity, and a vital opportunity, to go on a site visit and to have a look at the site before we formally come back and make any decision. So just to let you know that's to take place. Now, is there any other member would like to ask any questions of anybody at this stage? Councillor Kerr.
Convener, is this questions to officers as well?
Yes, it's this stage is members of the committee will be invited to question any party heard by the committee or may seek guidance on factual or legal matters from council officers after each presentation. So you can ask any questions of the objectors, you can ask any questions of the officers, and you can ask any questions of the agent.
Thank you, Convener. I've got a couple of no questions, but I would like a couple of answers brought to the committee, so we've got the answers when it comes back. One is Mr. Levetti mentioned the King's Council regarding the 5-year land supply. Is that something that we could get a sight of? Or will that not come into consideration?
Well, that's a very good question, because it's a burning issue with members.
Yes.
With a lot of developments that come forward, applications in relation to the council, this council's position on an effective land supply, whether we have or where we haven't. I think Mr. Levetti had brought up a case, the council, in relation to the fact that there was disparity with what people outside Falkirk Council was saying about our land supply than what Falkirk Council was saying. So, Mr. Dryden, we're going to bring in this.
Yeah, happy to come in, Convener. I think certainly I can say to Councillor Kerr that when the report comes before you in your capacity as the planning committee, we will obviously give careful consideration to the MPF4, particularly as it is now part of your statutory development plan. And certainly Mr. Levetti has mentioned about the King's Council advice, and obviously maybe Mr. Levetti, he may want to consider whether he wishes to potentially pass on any further information in that regard. I understand there has been further information provided, but we be reassured that we will certainly be giving that careful consideration. As you are aware, National Planning Framework 4 it's a good transition for us, and it's something that we will certainly carefully give consideration to, and be rest assured that the report that comes before you will give our assessment as officers for your consideration of the implication of MPF4, and will have regard to the comments Mr. Levetti has, and that will form part of our assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Dryden. My next question is, and I don't know if it will be you or Catherine or Mr. Teed at the planning and principle, and we've already agreed on an education contribution. Why would we agree that before we went to detailed planning?
And Mr. Dryden will come in again on that one.
I'll come in and say, Councillor Kerr, obviously you'll be aware of we have supplementary guidance on contributions, so therefore what is being asked for is actually the kind of formula that is in our guidance about contributions. So what you have before you is a standard response. Obviously you heard Mr. Teed earlier on this evening about potentially the scenario of how we potentially should permission be granted or invited to grant. We have subject to an obligation, clearly, because the contributions can't be dealt with by condition, but that's something we can look at as part of the report, and Mr. Teed will obviously be at the committee when it comes back before you. So really, what's there is standard response, and it really just confirms that the approved documents we have there just now and how we will deal with contributions, and it's based on calculations on the indicative layout, the number of units. So there's nothing there that we wouldn't normally expect with an application of this scale. So what's there is perfectly the norm. But Mr. Teed's on the call. I don't know if he wants to come back in, but I think what he has said is that clearly they will give consideration to how the strategy, to deal with the obviously issues of the actual accommodation capacity issues. But really, what's there just now is really in line with our supplementary guidance, which has been approved.
Okay, well, the only reason I mentioned it is whether we as a committee decide if it came to approval of this site, would we have the option of, in two ways, whether we think it's too much contribution or we think it's not enough contribution? Would that be in our gift?
Yes, I think that would be something that could be discussed in detail at the planning committee when we're actually considering the application. And that's something certainly, that's why I think it's important, along with officers that Mr. Teed is obviously in attendance at that planning committee, which we have yet to identify. Obviously, we want to get the application back as soon as we can, but clearly that's a fact that we can look at, and it would be certainly in your consideration to decide whether the levels being sought are appropriate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dryden.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Labetti, I'm afraid you've already spoken. Unless some other members want to ask you a question, you've had an opportunity. We have a procedure here that we've got to follow, and I'm just going back to members. Is there any other members at this stage who would like to ask any questions of anybody? Oh, Councillor Bowes. Yes, sir.
Sorry, Convener, just another question, and thanks, Sir Councillor Kerr, for bringing something to my head. I know something Mr. Teed might have to look at, and it might be difficult for me to get it, but the nearby Kinnaird estate, the council works on a number of, and it's a point something of children per household. The Kinnaird estate was far more than that. And my concern is that we base it on the Falkirk wide number, and yet we know the impact because you've now got Kinnaird Primary School, which is an 800 child primary school, which is actually the size of Grangemouth, I think it is, high school. It was never expected that amount of children would obviously go to that school. If possible for the actual meeting, can Mr. Teed have a number that from Kinnaird that ended up attending Kinnaird? I'm sure the ratio was a lot higher. I remember at a meeting with him when he presented it to the parent council. It would probably be useful to have that so that we can actually see the impact of any number of houses, if you can see the impact in that local area. Because obviously, I'm pleased to say I live in a very popular area for people to live in, and I'm sure there are other popular areas, but the Larbert, Stenishmere, Cairnshaw area is very, very popular.
Okay, Mr. Teed, you've heard Councillor Bowes. Would you be able to provide the information at the meeting when it's coming back?
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, I've got that information. I think the pertinent figure probably is the secondary ratio that we would expect, and that did remain very high in the inches even 10 years after it was developed. So there are some kind of local variations to the averages across Falkirk that I could explain at committee.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm still at members. Any other member would like to question any party heard by the committee? None? I see that I think it's Susan Beats has got her hand up. Just to let you know, Susan, without being disrespectful, that you have no opportunity to come in at this time. We've been going through a hearing procedure, and at this stage we're now in a process of winding this meeting up. But we thank you for your contribution, as well as Mr. Jenkins. Okay, So we're at 10, which is members of the committee may identify any other planning issues they wish to see addressed in the report of the meeting. The council will consider the application. We've already had that with Councillor Bowes, Councillor Redmond and Councillor Kerr, and I'm sure that the officers here have been taking notes of the additional information that we will require when this comes back. We'll also ensure that we get in touch with you as soon as possible to ensure that we have a site visit to allow those who are not format with this site to go out there before we come back to make a full decision. Other than that, I would like to take the opportunity to thank everybody this evening, members and officers and objectors and Mr. Lafferty for taking part. Other than that, have a safe journey home. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Convener.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night, convener.
Thank you.